This is Andrew Hall. You're listening to Dead Hand Radio. This special report celebrates the first full month of doing this podcast. I'm having a great time bringing you these episodes, and it's exciting to know that more people are listening, which means there's plenty more to come. This episode is dedicated to all the listeners and those who support this podcast. It's great to connect with so many people who have similar interests as I do, and it's encouraging to know that people actually find value in the topics covered on this show. Thank you so much for your support and encouragement. It would most certainly be a lot less interesting to do this if nobody was listening. Also, I'd like to take a moment to announce that Dead Hand Radio has joined forces with a great group of podcasters who share the same level of passion and commitment to producing quality shows for their listeners. The group is called Simply Irregular Podcast Network, and they're an awesome group of people who support and encourage each other so that we all benefit from our collective efforts. One of my favorite quotes is, "A rising tide lifts all boats," and that's the goal of the SIP network. This means more support and motivation to create new content for Dead Hand Radio, and more opportunity to connect with more people interested in history, exploration, unexplained mysteries, and much more. This brings me to my next announcement. Dead Hand Radio is making some changes. More specifically, the message and focus of the show has adopted a more positive vision. The podcast was originally created as a platform to focus on existential threats to life on Earth and the delicate nature of our planet. Well, when I came up with that idea for the podcast, there was no such thing as COVID-19, and it seemed okay to talk about end-of-the-world scenarios, mostly because it seemed unlikely they would ever happen. But it's also something I've been interested in since I was a little dude. See, I grew up in the 70s, and like many kids during that time, I was exposed to the threats of the Cold War. I remember as early as 7 years old knowing that the Soviet Union, aka Russia, had nuclear weapons pointed at us, and the US military had ours pointed at them. I didn't quite know what nuclear weapons were at the time, but I knew if there was a nuclear war, no one would survive. Now, because I was aware of this at such a young age, I've always been interested in the prospect of extinction-level events. Most of my friends and family already know that I'm a huge fan of post-apocalyptic science fiction and have been since I was a youngster. From watching reruns of Planet of the Apes movies in the 70s to watching The Road Warrior at the drive-in in the 80s and all the movies, novels, comic books, TV shows, and video games throughout my adult life, I've been fascinated with the post-apocalyptic genre. So when I thought about topics for my podcast, it was an easy choice to talk about issues that I've been interested in most of my life. But as I prepared to launch the podcast, there was an increasing concern about COVID-19 in Asia, the US, Europe, and the rest of the world. People were being asked to stay home to limit the spread of the virus. Businesses were ordered to shut down by the government, and the economy around the entire world came to a standstill within a few short weeks. This was the first time in generations that nearly everyone in the world was impacted by such an event. No one was prepared for the level of disruption to our daily lives. The numbers of sick and dying continued to increase, and the media reported the negative impact of the virus daily. So feeding into that fear and despair felt by the whole world was not something I wanted to contribute to. And for a while I was having a really hard time coming up with new content for the show. I would start to research a new topic and would end up feeling depressed and lose my motivation. I tried approaching the topic from a different angle, but I soon realized talking about the end of the world was not what anyone needed to hear right now. This gave me the idea to change the focus of the show on being positive, staying healthy, eating right, exercising, and being a positive force for the rest of the world. Look, Dead Hand Radio is still a show about the Cold War. I've just decided to focus on the positive impact that era from 1946 through 1991 had on our culture. Because when you really look at it, that period of history wasn't as dark as it seems. After studying it from a new perspective, I learned that it was actually one of the most prosperous, innovative, and creative periods in the history of the world. And I truly believe that once we've seen the last of this virus, that we'll experience a new surge of advancements in technology, science, creativity, innovation, and economic prosperity like we haven't seen since the end of World War II. There may even be a new baby boom once COVID-19 is nothing more than a footnote in the history books. And that's what I'm going to talk about, at least in the foreseeable future. Matter of fact, I've already started with some of the most recent episodes. My last few guests are super positive people who spread positive energy, and it's helped me redirect the focus of the show. So keep your spirits high, keep your thoughts looking forward, and keep your focus on brighter days ahead. Before I sign off, here's a quick shout out to the other members of the Simply Irregular Podcast Network. Check out sipnet.us for links and additional information about the following members of the network: Angry Dad Podcast, Terrible Terror Podcast, The Podcast from Another World, From the Wastes, Paranormal Pativity, Back in Time Podcast, and Fave 5 from Fans. They're a great group of podcasters. All of them have a very positive energy and a good flow to their presentation. You should definitely check them out. Finally, one last thank you to all the listeners for being part of this journey with me and giving me the motivation to continue recording and sharing this content. Remember, Dead Hand Radio is now available on all podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, GooglePlay, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and more. Be sure to check out the next episode of Dead Hand Radio as we continue exploring the Cold War and its impact on our world, our culture, and the future. If you'd like to join the conversation and be a guest on a future episode, just get in contact with me on Twitter @DeadHandRadio or by email at deadhandradio@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to leave me a voice message that may be included in a future episode, go to anchor.fm/deadhand/message. Thanks for listening to Dead Hand Radio. This is Andrew Hall signing off.